Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Really excited for this video because the draft order is almost just about set, kind of, not really, but we'll talk about that and more in this video, as well as giving my full first round NBA mock draft as anticipated at the end of the season. First day right after. Every single year I have an NBA mock draft that comes out that really ushers us into draft season on the channel, where we're going to have a lot more draft boards coming out, a lot of other stuff as well in terms of draft prospect breakdowns, talking about, the best players in the class at this, that, or the other thing. There's gonna be a lot of NBA draft content, so make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, leave a like on today's mock draft as well if you enjoy. I'm sure there's gonna be picks you disagree with. I'd love to hear your differences of opinion, of course respectfully, if you care to do so. And let's jump into it now with a quick reminder that if you want to know how the NBA draft lottery works, I have a great video up on the channel breaking down exactly what that looks like with the odds. That video is coming out today, 2 hours after this video. So if you're watching this right with notifications on, then as soon as this video is over, you maybe have like a 30-minute wait, and then you'll be watching this one. So it'd be awesome if you guys check that video out as well. I'm very excited about that one. I'll put a lot of work into that video every single year, so make sure to check that one out. And let's jump forward into the actual mock draft, where first overall, the Detroit Pistons have locked up the quote-unquote best odds. Now they have the same exact odds as picks 2 and 3 in this mock draft, of course, and in the real NBA, but they technically have the best odds because they can at worst only drop to 5th overall in the NBA draft with how the lottery works. So the Detroit Pistons here at this spot, I mean, we all know the answer, right? First overall, Victor Wembanyama is the answer for any team that gets this selection through the lottery. Of course, we don't have the lottery results yet. That won't be for a couple months yet, actually a month and I believe like 5 days away. So we're 35 days away or so from the draft lottery. That could be off a little bit by the time you're watching this, but nonetheless, Victor Wembanyama, he's the prize jewel. He's the gem of the draft. He's the #1 guy. And I've been saying it for a long time. I've been scouting this player since he was about 14, 15 years old. I believe the first time I really heard about him, he was maybe 12, which is the furthest I've ever been evaluating a prospect for. I myself am 23 years old, so I'm not that much older than this guy. And that's how long I've been watching him. I've been watching him before I graduated high school. I've had a very good understanding of who he was and who he was going to become, to the point where the day after last year's draft, basically, I started gushing over this guy and how good he was. I've never wavered from him being the first overall pick, even when there was a lot of buzz around Scoot Henderson, even when there's been buzz around Brandin Miller, this, that, or the other thing. Obviously, everyone knows Victor's been the first pick, but I've been saying it for a long time, well beyond this draft process. I've been saying it for years that he was going to be the guy in this draft, and the Pistons get him here in a busy turn of events where Dwayne Casey moves into the front office. They're now searching for a head coach, and they've got a really good, young, talented core. Obviously, losing Cade Cunningham for the season kind of derailed their year before it really got going. Playing Killian Hayes 28 minutes a game instead of Cade Cunningham, those minutes definitely impacts losing or winning. But I think the Detroit Pistons are well positioned. Jaden Ivey's a good player. Jalen Duren proved that he's going to be a beast in this league. And I think Detroit's one of the better landing spots as well for Victor in terms of where he would potentially fit. Just looking at the fact that, Duren's probably the 5. It takes some of the wear and tear off of Wembanyama's body, which is maybe the only concern people have about him, which I don't even think is really a fair concern, but I understand the concern as well. Although, again, like I said, I don't think it's fair. And then you also put him with a guard who can play make for others in Cade Cunningham. You have a dynamic cutter off of him in Jaden Ivey, someone who can get downhill whenever he wants. Wembanyama can space the floor. I know his three-point percentage is a question mark right now for people. You have to look at the types of threes he shoots. Okay, he shoots one-footed fadeaway threes. It's okay that he's shooting like 28, 29% from the three. It's not a big deal. If he was sitting there catching wide open catch and shoot threes, he'd probably shoot 38%. Not all three-pointers are the same. They're not all created equal. Wembanyama's been taking the toughest ones in the entire draft and playing at a pro level overseas. So you got to give this guy his respect. He's the best player in the draft, not even close. Case closed. Detroit gets the best player in this mock draft. Pick 2, that leaves San Antonio in an interesting spot where I'm going to whisper it real quietly because I don't want other fan bases to hear it, San Antonio, but I think that they're going to get the first overall pick in the lottery. I really do. I think the NBA is planning that. So based off of that, Wembanyama's probably playing in Texas next year is my thought. But again, other fan bases, you guys didn't hear me say that. And there's no way that the NBA draft is rigged. There's no way these small market teams keep getting taken care of, like New Orleans, Memphis, Minnesota. There's no way, right? There's no way, Adam Silver. But second overall here in this mock, San Antonio, I have them taking Scoot Henderson. I know there's been these questions, and Jonathan Gavoni of ESPN has been spreading misinformation for months now about how Brandon Miller could be pushing for the number 2. No, he's not. He is not pushing for the number 2 overall pick. That's not happening. Scoot Henderson is the second best prospect in this draft. Teams are not going to overthink this. They're not going to shy away from Scoot Henderson. Brandon Miller, everyone was saying, oh, look at this. And then he had a terrible tournament in terms of scoring the basketball, which is his best skill set. Scoot Henderson, he's a very intuitive player, and out of everyone in this draft, I'd say he's probably the most intuitive passer. And what I mean by that is he understands that, hey, I get to this spot on the floor, their defense is going to move this way a little bit. I can bend the defense, and then it opens up this passing lane for me to hit an open teammate. We really saw that growth from last year into this year. Now, I know people are concerned about him missing the whole season. If he doesn't get hit in the face, then it's a completely different story. It's a complete weird injury that doesn't or shouldn't impact his draft stock. Now, I know some people, some executives, some GMs are going to think a little harder about it, but it's not like they're going to let him fall, okay? He's going to go second overall. He needs to, he should, he will. He's the most dynamic guard in the class. He's the best guard in the class. Don't overthink this. San Antonio needs someone who can get this team organized, running a real offense, helping other guys like Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell score more efficiently, more easily. Oh, and by the way, he's going to also be able to average 20 to 25 points a game pretty quickly into his career. He's a better Anthony Edwards. That's really what he is. He's a better playmaker. Now, he's a little bit smaller, but just as athletic, vertically that is. I think he's quicker than Ant. I think he's got a better pull-up jumper than Ant. He's, again, smaller a little bit. I think defensively he's going to be more challenged than Anthony Edwards, who's had some awesome performances in his young career on that end of the floor. But I still think Scoot's a no-brainer second overall pick. Don't overthink this if you're running a team at this spot. Pick number 3, excuse that on the graphic. Pick number 3, Houston Rockets here at this spot, and I have them going with Amen Thompson here. With this pick, Amen Thompson feels like the very safe selection for me because, first of all, Houston, who has parted ways with Stephen Silas at this point, they're needing a new head coach, and they need someone who can run the show and get them organized. At times for Houston, we've seen Daishen Nix playing point guard, which is interesting. He has more career turnovers than field goals made. We've also seen a guy in Kevin Porter Jr. playing point guard, who is not a point guard. He is a shooting guard. He's a bench scorer. They continue to try and play him at point guard. It is what it is. Jalen Green's not a point guard. Jalen Green's a scoring off-ball guard. And this team is just really, really desperate for somebody who can run an offense and play make for others. And, Amen Thompson, he's played against lesser competition. He's been in the Overtime Elite League playing for the City Reapers, where he won the championship with his twin brother, Ausar Thompson. But, that's a lesser level of play. I get it. But he's been the point guard, and he is a very, very good passer. He's a very good playmaker. He's the best lob passer in this draft, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is. It's a skill to be able to vertically place the ball where you want so that others can go up and get it and dunk it. I think that's going to be very beneficial to a guy like KJ Martin in Houston if he were to land with the Rockets, of course. And then you also look at the fact that I think he's a very good reactionary passer to the point where he gets to a spot and all of a sudden he sees someone open. And he's just, oh, I can make this pass. I'll do it quick. And I don't think that there's as much planning intuition into it as I said with Scoot Henderson, but I think he's got the best actual passing skill set when it comes to the degree of difficulty of passes he can throw, the types of passes he can throw because of his frame. He's about 6'7". He's bigger than Scoot. I think the upside is maybe higher than Scoot Henderson, but the floor I think is significantly lower as well because he's not as good of a shooter as Scoot Henderson. He does not have a refined pull-up jump shot like Scoot Henderson has. I think he's a significantly bigger question mark in terms of the level of competition he's faced. Scoot Henderson's been playing in a pro league in the NBA G League Ignite program, whereas Scoot Henderson's been playing against a whole bunch of prep kids. That's a big difference. But everything that's skill set wise has flashed for Amen Thompson, and he's a player that at one point I was starting to really consider that he'd be locked in at 4 on my big board behind Brandon Miller. That's starting to reshift, and I'm starting to kind of move him back up my board a little bit. And I think I'm going to very strongly settle on him at 3 closer to Scoot Henderson, honestly, than I originally anticipated. Pick 4, we have the Charlotte Hornets here now, and this is a pretty good situation for Charlotte. You know, the 2 question mark fits for them would be Scoot Henderson and also Amen Thompson. How would they fit around LaMelo Ball? What do you do? Obviously, you draft the talent, but how would that fit? This one's pretty clear. You get a good talent and somebody who is an evident, clear fit around your best player already. Brandon Miller fits perfectly next to LaMelo Ball. He's a skilled shot maker. He's a wing who can handle the ball a certain extent. Now, I think his passing's been overblown. Yes, he's had some really nice passes, but his decision-making, I think, is rather slow. I don't think he's someone I can consistently trust to be a distributor. You know, I think the dream comp, what people hope he would become, is Paul George, and I've seen his numbers compared to Paul George. He's a significantly worse defender than Paul George was in college, and he's a significantly worse passer, significantly worse ball handler. I don't care what assists per game say. This is where you need to turn on the tape and actually watch the film. He's just not as good of a player in some of those areas as Paul George. It was shocking to me when Paul George slid down the board as far as he did in his own draft, but you know, Brandon Miller's not going to slide that far. He's going to be a top 5 pick, and he's a good player. The thing is, you know, it's easy to say I'm being negative here when I'm saying, well, he's not going to be Paul George. I think he's still going to be a very good player. He can shoot, he can handle for himself, create for others a little bit, not to the point where he's a superstar, but I think that's a growing skill for him and something that he's going to be able to do a little bit, which that's all you're asking, especially if you're Charlotte. You already have LaMelo Ball, who he's going to run the show for you. You don't need Brandon Miller to become this point forward type, which is just not what I think he is, which is a little bit more what PG is in the NBA, obviously. We've seen Paul George kind of play that point forward spot for quite a while now, and I don't think Brandon Miller is going to be that. I think he's going to be a hybrid scoring wing who can score at the rim. That was a big, you know, area of development for him this year at Alabama. Mid-season, we typically don't see progression like that. He is 20 years old as a true freshman, so he's a little bit older for, you know, that class for a freshman player. He's a little old, but I still don't have any red flags about that. And as long as all the legal stuff stays clear on him, there's no reason he shouldn't be a top 5 pick. He's a very good player, very good fit here in Charlotte. And I think this is a home run for them, specifically given the fact that they're picking at 4 in this mock draft. Pick number 5, we have the Portland Trailblazers, or should I say the Portland Tank Blazers, because the last 2 weeks they've been working very, very hard to get here. But they're now in a spot where they have a 10.5% chance in the lottery to move up to number 1. Again, check out that lottery video after this one to make sure you know how all the odds work and everything. But 5th overall, Portland's in a pretty good spot to add talent. And I think Jarace Walker is a great example of what Mike Schmidt and that front office there in Portland would be looking to add to Shaedon Sharpe, Damian Lillard. Jarace Walker is one of the few freshman draftees that could maybe come in and help a team. Now, is it possible Portland would look to explore this pick via trade and see what it could get them in terms of veteran stars? Veteran players that could help them win right now on Dame's timeline. Maybe this pick and Anthony Simons could go out the door for a really massive deal that we don't foresee at this point. Possibly. But let's say they just stick there. And that's really what I think is going to happen, is I think that they make a selection with this pick and continue to try and build this team long-term while still having Dame. I think Jarace Walker can help you with both areas. He's a young player, very strong. He's about 6'8", 240 pounds. Kind of reminds me of DeAndre Hunter in terms of the play style, but I think he's a more skilled DeAndre Hunter. Remember, Hunter went 4th overall quite a few drafts ago. I think Walker's more talented, better back to the basket game. I think he's a better mid-range scorer than Hunter, which is one of his main, you know, appeals coming out of Virginia. And I also think he steps out behind the three-point line a little bit better. He's got a better handle than Hunter did coming into the NBA. I think he's going to be more impactful defensively. He's more switchable. Jarace Walker is a very good player. For most of my drafts at the start of the year, for him, I kind of had projected him from anywhere about 8 to 12. And for me, it's just really cemented over the last couple months of the season here in college basketball that he's going to be a top 6 or 7 pick for sure. And realistically, I've been kind of leaning towards him at 5 as of late because he's got the size, he's got the strength, he's got the multi-positional defensive versatility that a lot of people are looking for. And when it comes down to it, the draft 6'8" guys are always way more appealing than 6'4" guys. It's just the way that the draft plays out. And that's why it makes, you know, Victor Wembanyama at 7'4" so crazy this year. Is, I mean, if you double Victor Wembanyama, he's just looking over both of your dudes. But, you know, it's funny because Jarace Walker, I just think he's got a very good physical frame to him. And I think he's going to be impactful on day one, which will help Portland here a little bit, maybe satisfy some of Dame's desires when it comes to winning. But at the same time, they have to do what's best for their franchise long term. Everybody and their mom should know that about the NBA, is you can't just look to appease your 32-year-old star. No offense to Dame, but you've got to set yourself up for future success as well. I think they did that last year with Shaedon Sharpe. I think drafting Jarace Walker here would help them further their chances at improving their team long term. Pick 6, the Orlando Magic here now, who are pretty happy with their likelihood of getting that Bulls pick as well in the lottery. At 6, though, with this pick, they take Ausar Thompson, which maybe feels like a kind of conflicting pick. And I know Orlando needs shooting. I know it. Ausar Thompson, he's growing as a shooter. I wouldn't say he's a great shooter yet. That's one of the big concerns about him. But I think he's growing there, and I think he's just such an intriguing talent that Orlando would say, let's just go best player available here, especially since we have 2 lottery picks. Let's worry about the second one being more fit-based and the first one being, hey, this is still a top 6 pick in the draft. We should prioritize talent, and then maybe this is a trade chip for us later, a guy we can see develop and maybe grow into something. And, you know, in this league, the more talent you have, the better. That's typically the way a lot of people look at it. I think Ausar Thompson's going to have a very interesting career. The big upsides on him: point of attack defender. He's extremely athletic. I talked about Amen Thompson being a great lob thrower. Well, guess who the great lob finisher was? It was Ausar Thompson, typically skying up there and throwing down some big, massive dunks pretty consistently. So I think Ausar is going to have a nice career. Again, I know this isn't the perfect fit for Orlando, but I didn't want to reach on a shooter at 6th overall. I think the lottery is going to be really important for this team, because if they move up into the top 4, it sets them up to maybe grab a Brandon Miller, which would be great for them and kind of gives them another hybrid wing scoring shooting type around Wagner and Banchero, which would be very, very good for them. But also, if they do get bumped down by a team below them, maybe moving up, then it makes it more plausible for them to draft a shooter, which isn't bad. And again, I don't think Orlando is really needy on drafting in the top 6. If they get there, they'll take a good talent, but if not, they can just go based off of fit and need and scheme stuff, and I think that's going to help them too. So I think Orlando's in a very strong spot. That Nick Vucevic trade years ago, I talked about it plenty of times on the channel, how well that set them up, and I think this is just another example of it here, picking 6th, and then also I believe at 12th in this mock draft. Pick 7, Washington Wizards here now. You look at a team that has been pretty directionless. That Bradley Beal extension, I mean, if you want to, go look at it on Spot Track right now, and you're going to see how much money they're paying him when he's, certain years of age, and you're going to say, wow, that's a lot of money to be paying a guy well into his 30s. They got a question mark on Kristaps Porzingis, who I think was their best player this year. What are they going to do with him? Obviously, his contract is not one that is long-term as of right now, so Washington's got some questions to figure out. And one of them's always been the point guard spot. And this is maybe going to be a conflicting pick in this mock. I've seen Nick Smith, people talk about him maybe as low as pick 20. I've seen people talk about him maybe as high as pick 5. I think that there's a very wide jury right now out on him. The one thing about Nick Smith Jr. is if you're gonna mention this guy as a prospect, you have to bring up his touch. He's got a beautiful floater, kind of reminiscent of Mike Conley a little bit with his floater. And I know that maybe didn't get everyone excited here about, oh, he's pick 7, Mike Conley comparison. I think he's going to be a little bit more of a volume scorer than Mike Conley, but I think the hope for him as a passer would be to grow into what Mike Conley has been in his career. Now, he's not anywhere close to that yet. I think there's a lot of room for him to grow. He's more of a combo guard than a point guard right now, but this is the first real semblance of Tommy Shepard having maybe an idea that point guard matters on his team since, signing John Wall to a Supermax. That's really the last time he really cared about it. Obviously, trading for Russ is what it is, whatever, but he needs to find somebody who he trusts can actually develop into a point guard. For me, maybe 7's a little high for Nick Smith Jr. But this team, I've said it, I feel like I've said it for 3 straight mock draft processes now, where I talked about it in 2021, 2022, and now I'm talking about it again in 2023. Until they address point guard long term, until they have a point guard plan in place that I actually trust, this is going to be a problem. And if they don't address it this draft, you can book it that in 2024, I'm going to be talking about it again, because the teams that have point guards, the teams that can run sets, the teams that get organized usually are good, and the teams that don't aren't. And to be honest, Washington's got good talent. Kuzma, Porzingis, Beal. I mean, that's 3 very good players, but they don't win. And it's not like their defense is brutal. I mean, Porzingis and Gafford, 2 of the top 15 players in terms of block shots this year. They've had decent numbers and metrics on that end of the floor. They're not a great defensive team, but it's not like they're league worst like Houston. They just need a point guard. They need somebody who can actually help organize them. And it's really hard to evaluate Wes Unseld Jr. until you give him a point guard that can actually run a show. And until then, I just don't know if we're going to know what Washington has. So it's been tough. Wizards are not in a great spot, in my opinion, especially with that Beal contract, like I talked about. Now, I understand he's a franchise player. You want to keep him around, maybe hang up his jersey even in the rafters at some point. All those things are great, but you need to get him a guard that he can run with and maybe win some games with. Pick 8, Indiana here now. It is important to note that there is a tiebreaker between Indiana and Washington. So as of right now, you could flip those two picks. Maybe Indiana would be at 7, and then you could say that Washington would maybe be at 8. That is a possibility based on a coin flip because that's how the NBA does it. But 8th overall here, Cam Whitmore would be the pick for me for Indiana. And Pacers fans, I know you guys just all probably dropped your phone or paused the video and probably put your hands up in the air and cheered about as loud as you can, even if you're at work, because Cam Whitmore is perfect for Indiana, a team that really badly needs more physicality, really badly needs wing play, someone who's versatile defensively. Now, I think that he didn't showcase defensively this year at Villanova as much as he could have. I know that there's people out there that believe that this year was a big red flag. And trust me, if you're someone who just started watching the prospects and you look at their freshman campaigns, you might say, why is Cam Whitmore a perceived top 10 pick? He didn't have a top 10 season out of the guys in this year's draft. And that's fair to say. But scouting goes way back before their freshman year of college. These players have been getting watched since they were 13, 14, 15 years old. FIBA U18, FIBA U17, all those kinds of things always play into a guy's draft status and how teams look at him. They've had their eyes on him for quite a while, just like I have. And Cam Whitmore, coming into the year, I thought was going to be a lock to be a top 5 pick because of how well he played this past summer before even stepping onto Villanova's campus as a student. Now, disappointing year. You see him drop down in my mock a little bit from where I thought he could have been, but he's still a top 10 pick because he has the overall body of work. He's strong. He can slash with the best of them. He's very, very good at finishing through contact and above contact. He's got an incredible vertical. He's going to throw down a lot of mean dunks. Don't be surprised if this guy's a slam dunk contest champion at some point either. I think he's going to be a good player in the NBA. I think Indiana needs somebody who can be a little bit more downhill other than Mathurin. And I think that they have it here next to Halliburton, Mathurin, Miles Turner. I think that Whitmore completes this team very well, and they still have 2 more first-round picks to talk about later on as well. Pick 9, Utah Jazz here now at this spot, and I have them looking at Anthony Black, who's a player I really, 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 really like. And for me, Anthony Black, I've talked about intuitive playmaking for a guy like Scoot Henderson. I talked about reactionary playmaking, reactionary passing specifically for a guy like Amen Thompson. I think that Anthony Black is probably the most instinctual passer in this draft because I think he just gets downhill, and I don't even know if he reads it. I don't even know if he understands how difficult of a pass he's about to throw is, but he just casually, he's just yeah, I know I can make that pass, and he just does it. It seems like the guy was born to pass the basketball. Some of the passes he's thrown this year have just been remarkable and incredible. And for that alone, it keeps me wondering why other people don't see him as highly as I do. For me, Anthony Black's probably going to finish around the top 5 or 6 on my big board. I really, really like him. Now, defensively, I think that he showcased a lot of what his potential leads you to believe. Now, was he a stopper at Arkansas? No, but he was the guy that they used to try to stop the other team. And that's already a good step in the right direction of, hey, his college coach trusted him, put him on ball a lot. He applied a lot of ball pressure, got a lot of deflections, and he did disrupt some stuff. Now, consistently staying in a stance and being a disruptor are 2 different things. Was he a stopper yet? No. But I think that he's shown some things about his ability to cut off guys, his ability to disrupt with his length, that makes you believe that he could take steps forward into becoming that at the NBA level. A guy that I think about is Jaden McDaniels. Now, McDaniels is a completely different player, 6'10", more shot blocker when he was in college playing for Washington. He was a chase down machine. Anthony Black's not like that, but it's a similar comparison where Jaden McDaniels wasn't a stopper either in college. He was a defensive playmaker, and then he became more of a stopper in the NBA, where we see a 99th percentile type of defensive coverage from him in terms of types of players he's guarding and his success against those players. And I think Anthony Black could see a similar increase. Plus, like I said, I talked about a lot earlier with Nick Smith Jr. about how important it is to have a guy that can maybe organize you and run a show. I think Anthony Black's very, very good at that. And I think he would be someone I would trust on day one of his career to be a starting guard in the league, probably a little bit more of a combo guard than a true point guard right now. But I think that the framework's there. He's 6'7", lengthy. He's smart. All the things that you're checking off for a point guard that you'd want, like if you could build a point guard, you end up somewhere close to Anthony Black. Now, does he shoot the ball very well? Not quite yet. I think that's a big question about what his development is, but he's so impactful in all the other areas that I think he's going to be a good NBA player for sure. And Utah starts to build out their point guard and backcourt situation long-term starting now. Pick 10, look at that. The Dallas Mavericks are here. If you can't tell, I am a Dallas Mavericks fan. Unfortunately, with how the season ended, I'm pretty ashamed of the tanking. I did a live stream the night the Mavs got eliminated. Very disappointing end to the season. I'm not a fan of trying to lose, but this is the reason why, because they have a top 10 protected pick this year. There's a 17% chance that pick still goes to New York because the teams below them could move up in the lottery, but that's none of my business. And if it happens, we'll call it karma and probably deserved. But the Mavericks here at 10, this is the player everyone wants, and this is the player that makes the most sense too. Taylor Hendricks from UCF. He's the perfect home run fit for Dallas right now because I've been saying it for about 3 or 4 years. The Dallas Mavericks literally have zero athleticism on their roster. They have zero players who can rebound the basketball other than Luka Doncic, who I believe has led the team in rebounding now for 3 straight years. Oh, and by the way, this guy can shoot from behind the arc. He's multi-positional defender who can switch. He can block shots. Everything that Dallas really needs, Taylor Hendricks is pretty good at, which is why he should be a top 10 pick in this year's draft. To start the year, a lot of people didn't even have him as a first-round guy, myself included, but he just balled out this year for UCF. And if you were late on it, well, then you're behind because he's been so good for UCF, and I'm very happy for him that he's had such a good season because he's catapulted himself into not only lottery discussion, but as you can tell here, top 10 pick discussion, which is where he firmly belongs after the season that he had. There's not a lot of players who gave Jarace Walker fits this year for Houston. Yeah, Taylor Hendricks was one of them. He actually dominated Jarace Walker in their head-to-head matchup a little bit, and you see Jarace Walker went 5th overall, Hendricks goes 10th, but I think that there's a good argument to be had that Hendricks could end up having a better career. Not necessarily that he will, but there's a real potential of that happening, and Dallas would feel really happy about getting a guy like Hendricks here who can, again, protect the rim, shoot out in space. He's a pretty good slasher as well. Now, I think there's areas for him to improve. I don't think there's star potential here, but I think there's really good two-way, four-man rebounding wing type rim protection, small ball 5, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of upside for him to live up to a variety of roles in the NBA, and I think that's really, really good for Dallas, a team that really doesn't have a lot of depth. They don't have a lot of ways to get better. This is a pick that they have to nail, and I think Taylor Hendricks, a draft selection on him, is nailing it at this spot. Pick 11, the Oklahoma City Thunder here now. Of course, I am recording this before the play-in game, so it's possible OKC maybe gets into the playoffs. And, last year I said this team's a lot closer to winning than everyone thinks. And, I thought with Chet Holmgren that they could be a playoff team. Well, no Chet Holmgren this year, don't even matter. They have some type of postseason, so big credit to them. Glad to see that they're building something very, very successfully. And I think GG Jackson would be an interesting grab here at this spot. I think one thing about Sam Presti is he's looking for players who can dribble, pass, and shoot, and GG Jackson checks off 2 of those boxes. He can dribble and he can shoot. Now, efficiency-wise, he wasn't a great shooter this year, but a little bit more of a project, and I think with Oklahoma City's direction, they're going to look at themselves and say, look, we have Chet Holmgren coming. We already are adding a guy that we would consider a top 2 or top 3 player in this draft. We don't need to necessarily find a high impact guy right away, day one. I think that they would say, let's continue, especially with the new CBA that's being implemented, let's continue to find young talent that we trust that we can develop. They've done a great job adding and developing young talent. And I think this is another example of a guy who, he had a bad season for South Carolina. I'm not going to lie. You could tell he was one of the younger players out there playing, but I'm not going to hold that against him. Amani Bates has gotten ripped on for a bad season, very similar season, honestly, to GG Jackson, especially if you look at the efficiency numbers. Now it's a little bit different, but South Carolina wasn't good. GG Jackson was the main reason as to why they weren't good. Not, their whole team wasn't good. I'm not trying to blame all the losses on GG Jackson, but if GG Jackson's your go-to player every single night, you're not going to win a lot, especially with how young he was. But for OKC, he can maybe fit into a role. And you look at the power forward spot next to Chatting, it looks pretty open, is what I'm going to say about that. Now, I know OKC's found a lot of success playing small. You think about Giddey, Shea, obviously J-Dub, and then you also throw in Lou Dort. They're really not that small because they've got big, lengthy guards. But in terms of small, in terms of girth and you know, true power forwards, they don't really have a guy like that. So I think G.G. Jackson could develop into that maybe for them. And really, you know, this is a swing on upside. If he doesn't pan out, Oklahoma City's still in a great spot. They're one of the few teams that I feel like, hey, take a shot here at 11, and if it rides, it rides, and if it doesn't, you're okay. Pick 12, the Orlando Magic, again on the board here. Obviously, 6th overall, we went with Ausar Thompson, but like I promised, we're coming back and finding a shooter in Gradey here. I was comfortable with him and Jordan Hawkins on the board that Orlando would be able to find one of those two guys, and Gradey is my preference over Jordan Hawkins, which I know some people are going to roll their eyes at because Hawkins just won a national championship. Trust me, there's been guys before that have won national titles that aren't perfect NBA players. I don't know why that's always misconstrued in April. It's always the tough time of the year. But Gradey bigger than Jordan Hawkins. He's a better inside the arc scorer than Jordan Hawkins. He shot a better percentage from 3 this year than Jordan Hawkins. He's just a better player than Jordan Hawkins is, to be honest with you. I like his game. I have a scouting profile of him up on the channel. Make sure to check that out. I'll try and put a card for that right here now. So make sure you click that after this video as well. Maybe that's what you do between this video and that lottery video. But I really recommend Gradey to a team. He is a phenomenal gravity shooter. What I mean by that is he's going to open up some of those driving lanes for Banchero, Wagner. We're going to see the whole efficiency of the team kind of skyrocket a little bit just by the natural spacing that a guy like Gradey provides. He's got a very pure stroke, pause, but he's just a good basketball player. He's somebody who can really shoot the basketball. He's also pretty good playing inside the arc. He's an excellent offensive rebounder, which is something that I don't think a lot of people are going to, credit to him. He doesn't look like he'd be a great offensive rebounder, but he is. And also, I think team defense-wise, he's smart enough to not be a total disaster. Now, I do think, come playoff time, when Orlando's finally back in the postseason, they are going to have moments where Gradey is the guy getting targeted and attacked, and there's going to be like a red X on him for teams to say, yeah, bring this guy up to the level of the screen, let's attack him. Yes, but the whole hope here for Orlando is with Ausar, with Paulo, with Franz, with Wendell Carter, all the length with Bol, that maybe you have a collection of talent around him that can maybe hide some of those deficiencies as well. And, every player has some weakness. I know Gradey's weaknesses might be a little bit more glaring in some areas, but he's still a very good player, should be a lottery pick, and I think at 12th is a perfect fit for a team that really badly needs some shooting. Pick 13, Toronto Raptors here now. Again, very likely this team could make the playoffs through the play-in tournament. We'll see what happens with them, but they've got a big offseason ahead of them, specifically headlined by the question mark about Fred VanVleet. Where is he going to go? And also Gary Trent Jr., which leaves their backcourt pretty vulnerable and open. And I think this is a guy who could fit in at either position, kind of as like a pseudo point guard for them a little bit. Now, I know that they've liked playing Scotty Barnes as a point guard-esque type player a little bit this year. But also, Gary Trent Jr., if he goes, Cason Wallace could fit in as a two-guard, kind of a combo guard off the ball. He did both this year for Kentucky, and I think he found success playing both ways a little bit. Now, I think as the season progressed, he started to flash a little bit more offensively. But really, when you're drafting this guy, you're drafting him for his defensive upside and his defensive capabilities, which is something we know Masai Ujiri really likes because he's a smart player. He's a winner. He's going to make winning plays consistently. And I know Kentucky didn't have as much success as usual. I don't think that's all on Cason Wallace. It shouldn't fall on his shoulders completely. And I think that there's a lot of reasons that Cason Wallace is going to be a good NBA player. He's very, very smart and instinctual defensively. I mean, there's moments this year where he rotated in off the corner shooter and he gets a tie ball with the big man. Again, he's a guard. So the fact that he's doing that, like I watch him and I think, wow, this is kind of like Marcus Smart a lot of the time. I think offensively, maybe not as skilled as Marcus Smart was coming out of college. People forget how good Marcus Smart was before getting drafted by the Boston Celtics and how good some of his college tape was. But I think Cason Wallace is a similar player. I think similar build, maybe a little bit smaller, but I think similar toughness. I think he's got the similar knack to him of making big plays when they need to happen. I just like Cason Wallace's game a lot. This is a very Toronto-esque pick to me with the way that they've drafted in recent years, and I like this addition. Now, Toronto's another team that could really badly use a shooter, but I just felt like Cason Wallace makes a little bit more sense here at 13 than kind of forcing their hand on a shooter at this spot. Pick number 14 now, the New Orleans Pelicans here via the Los Angeles Lakers. And for them, I have Keyonte George here at this spot, a player who I think is a pretty good fit for New Orleans, especially with the direction of this franchise. You know, they have their core pieces in place with CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson. You have to feel very good about that. Jonas Valanciunas, also a nice player. Behind him, they've got some other center options that they like. Obviously, Jackson Hayes has been pretty decent for them. From time to time, Larry Nance has been very good since they acquired him via trade as well. They obviously are in love with Trey Murphy, as they should be. I loved the draft pick of Trey Murphy when they got him. The fact that they traded down with Memphis and still, in my opinion, got the better prospect at the time in Trey Murphy over Zaire Williams. I was very impressed by that move. And then also Herb Jones, who I really loved. I thought I had a first-round grade on him myself. I was shocked that he went in the second round just with the way he played in the SEC playoffs, and then also March Madness in his run with Alabama. I was very surprised that he went in the second round because I thought he should have been a first-round pick. You like all their spots. I think that the only question is who's their long-term point guard. What does that look like? Obviously, Dyson Daniels. To me, he's kind of more of a forward, honestly. I know that, you know, he's got some of that playmaking feel, but I don't think he's enough of a scorer to be a true point, if that makes sense. I think Keyonte George has that kind of bench scoring mentality to him where he could fit early on in his career, not having to be forced into the starting lineup or anything. He could be a little bench spark plug for this team. It doesn't really mess up their chemistry. But also, I think that there's the upside there for him to become a scoring guard, a dynamic shot maker, dynamic shot creator for others a little bit too. He hasn't done that a ton, but I think there's upside to him maybe being able to do that. New Orleans, pretty good spot here for them to make this pick, and I think it's a pretty good outcome for them. Also, my apologies, it shouldn't be via Lakers. I just realized that mistake. The Lakers are in the playoffs, essentially, depending on play-in, obviously. So excuse that little mistake there, but this is just outright the Pelicans pick. Pick 15, the Atlanta Hawks here now. And at this spot, I have them going with Kris Murray, which I've seen some creative comparisons for him, including left-handed Keegan Murray, who's his twin brother. And yes, Kris Murray is left-handed, and yes, he has a very similar skill set to Keegan. I do think that it's pretty fair comparison, to be honest, because they play very similarly. I think Kris Murray a little bit more reliant on the three ball at the collegiate level, which you might say, well, that's not really surprising because Keegan Murray's been very reliant on the three ball at the pro level. I think that's really the big reason why, though, Kris Murray's a lesser prospect than Keegan. Keegan was able to do a little bit more in college and found more success playing in different ways, different fashions. And in the NBA, he's been a little bit more restricted, especially playing off of Sabonis and Fox as kind of a spacer. And he's done very well in that role. Don't get me wrong. Keegan Murray's had a great rookie year. I think Kris Murray's going to have a very good rookie year too. I think Atlanta's a great spot for him to land. He can play kind of that hybrid forward spot where you can play him with some bigger lineups. You can play him with some smaller lineups. He's going to find success either way. One thing about the Murrays, they both know how to play. They're both smart. They both know how to back cut. They're connectors sometimes, like they don't have the ball stick in their hands a ton. They don't need to dribble the arrow to the ball to score. And that's always nice if you can find a guy who can help impact winning without having to dribble a ton. That means you're probably finding a guy who's going to, first of all, fit well with your stars. So cough, Trae Young probably will like playing with this guy. And secondly, he's just a solid player who makes sense. So he's going to go from the Hawkeyes to the Hawks. I like it for him and I like it for them. Pick 16, we have the Utah Jazz here now. This pick comes from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I don't want to throw any punches here, pun intended, of course. But this is a great situation for Utah, just with how Minnesota's season has gone. And this is a great situation for a player who was not on anyone's radar as a first-round pick coming into the year, but he definitely should have been, because after transferring out of Illinois, landing in Santa Clara, he basically took all of Jalen Williams' success that he had last year, J-Dub for the Thunder, and said, yeah, let me do that and more this year for Santa Clara. And he's had such a good season. They call him the left-handed curly-headed assassin. He's been great this year. He's been absolute money from behind the arc. In fact, probably one of the best shooters in this year's draft, if not the best pure shooter, very reminiscent of Luke Kennard when it comes to his actual shooting form. But I think there's more that he can do than what we've seen from Luke Kennard in his NBA career. If I had to give a comparison, I would say a little bit better Luke Kennard, which is a very good player. We've seen Luke Kennard be valued around the league. Detroit first, and then Clippers obviously gave up a draft pick to get him. And then the Memphis Grizzlies obviously pivoted to go out and get him as well this trade deadline. And I think Podziemski, he's got, there's some questions about what he's going to be. But Brandin Podziemski overall, he's a smart player. He works very well off of dribble handoffs, zoom actions, which is what Santa Clara runs a decent amount of, as well as horn sets, which is a very standard in the NBA. Both zoom and horns are kind of at the forefront of a lot of sets. And, I talked about Utah looking to add a little bit more stuff around their front court, adding some more backcourt type players. I think Podziemski is kind of that nice hybrid. He'll do a little bit for you on the ball, do a lot for you off the ball as a shooter spacer type at the NBA level. That the more shooting you can add for Utah right now, the better, because you're hoping at some point some of these picks turn into, top 5, top 3 type selections. And if you already have the framework, the infrastructure of a Lauri Markkanen, a Walker Kessler, who's going to be your long-term rim protector, a shooter in Brandin Podziemski, maybe a guard type in a guy like Cason Wallace, like we talked about earlier, you're setting yourself up for real success early on in the career of a top pick. And that's all they can hope to do right now. And you never know, it might not even have to be a top pick. They have all the draft assets right now. Maybe they go out and trade for a star, maybe a Luka Doncic type player. Obviously might not be Luka, it could be somebody else, but that type of star. They have the assets to maybe go make a move like that. And you never really know what's going to come around the corner. And they're going to set themselves up to be successful with or without a star. And I think Podziemski helps them go a long way in doing that. Pick 17, the Lakers here now, and I have them going with Jordan Hawkins. Of course, the player who's probably gained the most through March. A lot of people are looking at him as a lock to be a lottery selection. I'm not as certain about that. You think back to Ochai Agbaji last year, who had a significantly better actual regular season campaign than Jordan Hawkins. He went 14th overall after winning a national title as well. So I don't think Hawkins is a lock to be a lottery pick. I think he's very much in consideration for it. Now, should he? That's a completely different story, and one that I'm not going to touch on as much here. Remember, these mock drafts are not my own big board. But with this mock, I think that he'll probably land anywhere from about that 12 to 20 mark is about right. And the Lakers, a team that once they added some shooting and some floor spacing, they found success. It also comes down to Anthony Davis playing healthy and dominant basketball, something he doesn't consistently do. And then Jordan Hawkins, I think, just helps continue that when you look at their bench. He'd come off the bench early. Maybe they run some stagger stuff for him. That's what he mostly ran at UConn. Dan Hurley's offense is very, very smart, very well set up. They run a lot of screen action off the ball, which is very good for a player like Hawkins, who projects to be a movement shooter at the NBA level. Now, I've got concerns about his ability to finish around the rim. I think playing around a little bit more length, size, and athleticism is going to be a struggle point for him. He has some of the worst finishing capabilities in this draft in the first round, to be honest. If you get him around contact, you get him around length, he's going to struggle around the rim. I'm not trying to be overly critical, but there's a reason most of the year he's been at pick 25 or later in pretty much all of my mock drafts. And yes, UConn got hot at the right time. Yes, he got hot at the right time. And don't get me wrong, he's athletic. He can finish when there's nobody in front of him. But really, the good players are the ones who finish at the rim through contact. And, I hope he develops in that area. I want all of these guys to be successful. But the reality is he's further behind than some of the other prospects in that area. And it's a very important area. But for the Lakers, that matters way less when you have LeBron, AD, presumably D'Angelo Russell, who's going to do a lot more of the ball handling, maybe attack downhill a little bit. Obviously, kind of relies a little bit more on touch and a float game. But I think Hawkins could be a nice fit piece, and that's how people need to look at him. He's not going to be a star in the NBA. It's just he doesn't have the tools to be that. And that's not a knock on him. We're talking pick 17, okay? The reason I'm mentioning this for him is because you go on Twitter and you see some stuff about a guy who just won the national title. I understand why, but that's just showing a lack of understanding of the game, to be honest, in my opinion. Pick 18, the Miami Heat here now at this spot, and with Miami 18th overall, I have been going with Trayce Jackson-Davis, who I think one of the few guards I would trust to actually step in and maybe be a starter at some point in year one of his career. Which is a good thing. I talked about Anthony Black. I trust him. I would trust Cason Wallace because of the defensive capabilities. Trust Scoot Henderson. I trust Amen Thompson. And then after that, you're like, oh, is there any more starting point guards? So what are we thinking? Nick Smith Jr., is he a starting point guard? Is he a starting two guard right away? There's all these questions about him, right? Trayce Jackson-Davis is somebody who he's very adept in the pick and roll. He's a pro type player. He fits the prototype of a point guard in today's NBA. Put him in a high pick and roll, he'll probably make the right read. And that's about 75% of the battle when it comes to evaluating guards at this point. If they can run a pick and roll, and if they can hit a pass to the corner while moving the opposite direction, that's already a very good prospect when it comes to playmaking capabilities. And I know, I'm probably sounding facetious a little bit, but if you have the size, you have the shot making in the mid-range like Hood-Schifino here has. If I've been calling him Trayce Jackson Davis, that's my apologies. Jalen Hood-Schifino, obviously. I think that he's a pretty solid prospect and somebody who could help Miami, especially with the Kyle Lowry situation. It's just not been a great signing for them. So definitely clears some things up in that regard. Pick 19, the Houston Rockets I have going with Dereck Lively out of Duke, a player I really like. Now, Houston, people are going to be saying, well, they have Alperen Sengun. This is kind of a hybrid fit around Sengun, who I think has the skill set to play with a guy like Dereck Lively. Lively does a good job playing around the top of the key as well as a ball mover and a continuity screener. I think that there's some success that he could have with a new coach and a new spot in Houston, playing around a Sengun, who, again, very similar to Filipowski, but a better player than Filipowski. I think that, his presence around the rim, his length, his, target radius in terms of a lob catcher would give Sengun kind of a fun partner to play with at the big man spot. And also he clears the glass. He blocks the shot. He blocks shots very well. He's an incredible rim runner, rim roller. There's a lot to like about him. I think Dereck Lively is one of the more underrated prospects in this draft by the wide majority of people. He will be higher on my big board than where you see him in this mock draft. There's no question about that. I like him very, very much. And I think that he's going to be a nice player. I think Houston gets a good value pick at this spot. And remember, earlier on, we found him a point guard who can throw lobs too. Dereck Lively is going to be the benefactor of that. So I think this draft's a very strong one for Houston if it plays out this way. Lively, Thompson, that's a huge home run in my book for Houston. And then at 20, this is another home run because this is a perfect fit into a system. Trayce Jackson Davis out of Indiana. We just talked about Jalen Hood-Schifino going to Miami at pick 18. I understand. People are going to say, whoa, Trayce Jackson Davis, a senior, 20th overall. Typically, we see senior big men go a little bit lower. Trayce Jackson Davis is not your typical senior big man who just bullied everyone because he's bigger. In fact, he's only about 6'9", which might be raising some concerns. Well, why would they want a 6'9" center? He's not that big. What does he really give them? Well, he fits perfectly into a variety of things. First of all, he's a very good screen and roll guy. Now at Indiana, Mike Woodson was trying to have him play a lot of post-up basketball. And he's not bad there. He's not a terrible post-up player, but he's not a great post-up scorer. We'll talk about why he has a post-up role in the NBA and what that's going to look like. But as a screen and roll guy, he's adept. He's a smart passer, so you can hit him on a short roll, and he can be a decision maker there. We've seen Draymond Green find so much success in that role. At some point, someone else is going to have to succeed that. And I think Trayce Jackson Davis might be the guy because he's got very good athleticism. He is a high volume shot blocker as well, despite only being 6'9". And it's because he's got wing type athleticism. Now, does he have wing type skill set offensively? No, but we've seen Golden State has really valued a lot of athleticism, speed, and IQ on the defensive end of the floor over, just pure size. And they found a lot of success doing that. I think Trayce Jackson Davis is a player who completely embodies that. And then offensively, let's go back to that post game that I talked about. Like I said, I don't think he's going to be a good post scorer in the NBA. I don't think he's going to be a go-to guy with his back to the basket. But in Golden State, he could be, but not as a scorer. They would use him so well in their post-split series. I'm telling you right now, I might make a video someday about Golden State's post-split series and the variety of stuff that they've ran out of it. Steve Kerr, if you want to just argue that he's maybe the best coach in the league, you would have to start with the post split and just break down everything that they've done out of it and how well they've utilized Klay Thompson and Steph Curry as threats without the ball before you even talk about anything else with Steve Kerr, because that's really their greatest strength offensively. I think when they're at their best, they're running 8 to 10 post splits a game at least, and maybe even more than that. We've seen them run more than that in the past. And Trayce Jackson Davis is a very good passer. Now, I know he's only averaged about 3.5 assists, 4 assists a game. You might say, well, that's not really a great passer, but the amount of hockey assists this guy has, typically, teams will double down on him in the post because he was just better than some guys guarding him. And he would just kick the ball out casually, and it would start a little ball swing reversal, and Indiana would get a wide open shot. But on the rare occasion that Indiana shot somebody through and they had a cutter, he consistently, routinely found that pass, made the right play. He'd also kick it out to the opposite corner. He's just a good passer out of the post. And, for all the picks outside of the lottery, when it comes to fit, this is my favorite one. I will kind of be heartbroken, honestly, on draft night if Golden State passes over him and then doesn't get him in the second round. It's possible TJD could be a second round pick, but I really think if Golden State's here, they should just not mess around and take the player that perfectly fits their scheme. Pick 21, Brooklyn now at this spot. This pick comes from Phoenix, and I have them going with Brice Sensabaugh, who's been a very routine, consistent pick for me here, because I think long-term, if you're looking for this team to continue to improve and build around the players that they've recently acquired in Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, who's been fantastic, and around, Nick Claxton and Spencer Dinwiddie, you're looking for an off-ball guard who can get to spots and score. And that's what Brice Sensabaugh really checks off the list. I know maybe if you're a Nets fan, you're watching all my mocks, you might say, well, it's not fun. He mocked Brice Sensabaugh to us again. No, trust me, it's fun. Brice Sensabaugh is a good player. He is an adept mid-range scorer. You might say, oh, smaller Kevin Durant. No, he's not quite that good, okay? But, he's very, very strong. He's got a compact body type, which I think is very good for his position. He's going to be able to play into his spots that he wants to get to. He's going to be bigger, stronger than guys, even though he's not the tallest player in the draft by any means. I think he's a very, very good pickup here for Brooklyn. I've seen a lot of people have him as high as maybe 14. I don't think he quite goes that high. I try not to look at other mocks or anything too much. Mostly this is all based off my own opinions and really what I see in a player. So sometimes am I going to be wrong? Yes. But for the most part, last year I had all top 10 picks completely right in terms of what players were top 10 picks, and then I had most of them right. I think I had Paolo and Jabari flipped, of course, because pretty much that was all the reporting we had heard, and that's just kind of what had made sense to me, even though I talked multiple times about how Paolo would be a better fit in Orlando based on what they needed, and then they actually flipped and did what they were supposed to do. But obviously some of the post reporting has said that they were leaning towards Jabari before the draft. So, I was very accurate last year, very precise as well, with a lot of the picks being perfectly accurate. But, nonetheless, sometimes am I going to be wrong? Yeah, Brice Sensabaugh might be a guy I'm wrong on in terms of maybe I'm a little too high, maybe a little too low. But, I think he's somebody who, if he landed in Brooklyn, he'd be a perfect selection for them. Then 22nd, we're staying on the Brooklyn Nets. And here we're going to go with Dariq Whitehead. This is an upside pick, a guy who was the National Player of the Year at the high school level last season. And then there was a lot of expectations for him at Duke this year, and he just never really lived up to it. But I still trust the talent. I trust his shooting touch. I trust his shooting capabilities. I just think Duke, he never really found a rhythm with the way that they asked him to play. I don't think that I don't think Shire used him perfectly as an off-ball weapon, a guy who can cut and move and catch and be balanced and rise up into shots. And in Brooklyn, it's going to be fair. Is he going to get those types of opportunities? Maybe not. So there's a little bit of risk here, right? But I think that the upside, the talent is there. I really liked him coming out of college. I thought that he would be a top 3 pick in this draft, just based on his shooting touch and his ability to space the floor. I kind of expected him to have the freshman season that Brandon Miller had, to be honest with you. And he has had a better long-term track record, which would have made him a top 3 pick in this year's draft. But he didn't have that. This is me being fair and accurate about this, and he should be not a top 3 pick anymore, obviously. And he's a guy who probably doesn't go in or near the lottery really at this point. Now, do I think if I'm a team drafting in the 20s that I'd be salivating about the opportunity to draft this kid? 100%, because a year ago, these teams were probably planning on him being well off the board. And the fact that he might be there for them, he's still the same player he was in high school. It's just about rhythm, opportunity, touches, and showcasing that and building back some of that confidence that he probably did lose after a tough freshman season for Duke. Now, I'm interested to see if he actually does fully declare for the draft or not. I think there are some questions about if he's going to 100% do that at this point. I do not have confirmation that he's out in the draft or that he's going to fully declare for the draft or if he's going to maintain college eligibility or not. But I think that it's very possible that we could see him go back to school, although I don't think that he should or does he need to. I think that he would be a player that sticks in the NBA. It's just about finding that right spot, and I hope Brooklyn is it for him. Pick 23, Portland on the board. Again, here this pick comes from the New York Knicks, who really excelled after that Josh Hart trade, but now it puts Portland in a spot where they can add another talent, and I like Noah Clowney for them a lot. You remember earlier on we went with a guy in Jarace Walker, 5th overall. Found kind of our long-term 4 if you're Portland. Now you're finding your long-term small ball-ish type 5. He's not the biggest guy. He's about 6'10", but he rebounds the ball really well, and he's a prototype big because you have to be to play for Nate Oates at Alabama, because he's going to ask you to shoot threes and layups, and that's what the NBA is trending toward. I think some of the beauty in the game's been lost because of that, but at the same time, it's just the way that it is. And when you're trying to maximize points per possession, trying to maximize offensive touches by getting some offensive boards, Clowney's going to help you with that. I think Clowney's going to be a very nice pickup for whatever team gets him. Now, does he ever become a long-term starter in the NBA? Maybe not, but I think that he can have a serious role in the NBA. You could probably play him at power forward in certain lineups because of his shooting touch, which he did display this year for Alabama. And, day one, he's not going to be NBA ready. He probably does need to spend some time with a G League affiliate. That is completely okay. Most of these guys will. I always say that, and someone in the comment section always says, whoa, you think, they all get offended about that. Like 60% of the players in the NBA now spend time in the G League. It's very normal. It's acceptable. The whole point of it is to have guys play more basketball. And if they're not playing 20 minutes a night at the NBA level, why would you just have them sit and watch? They don't get better by watching. Now, they do get a little bit better, but they don't, and get to work on their skill set and work on employing, certain defensive schemes, this, that, and the other thing. I think Clowney's going to find success if he's playing the G League pretty quickly. I think he would be a double-double machine there. And I think that at some point, with the way Portland's center spot's looking, he could find some serious minutes probably early on in his career, and at worst by year 2. Big 24, Sacramento on the board. Now, what a phenomenal season the Kings have had. Shout out to Kings fans. And I'm rewarding you here with a really fun, nice selection in Ryan Rupert, who I think would fit really well into this team. Now, he's a little limited offensively at this point with the way that he's going to be able to impact the team and impact winning with the ball in his hands. But if you're Sacramento, you say, well, we're not even worried about that. We have Domantas Sabonis, who's one of the best passing big men in the league. And we also have De'Aaron Fox, who has the ball a good amount. We have Malik Monk off the bench, who has the ball a good amount. They feel very good about the team that they have, the ball handlers that they have, the guys who have the ball in their hands. They trust them. So now it's about finding athletes, defensive type players. I was kind of surprised they didn't target Matisse Thybulle this past trade deadline. I thought that was going to be towards the top of their priority. Ultimately, nothing came to fruition there. But they now find themselves in a spot where maybe they can get an athletic wing type defensive player who's going to block some shots. He's going to get some steals, and he's going to get out and run. And he's going to fit very well into Mike Brown's corner cutting offense too, where, they try to put a lot of pressure on the strong side area of the floor, which a lot of teams typically don't do that in the NBA. That's why the Kings have found so much success doing it this year, because it's a little atypical. I think that, a guy like Rupert is going to help and fit into that system as well. 25, the Grizzlies here now. Team that without Steven Adams in the playoffs, they have a tough challenge. We'll see if Ja is actually fine in the West or not. But a player that I think would be a nice addition for them is Jett Howard. Now, I went back and forth about thinking about, does Memphis look to add a big man here? I just couldn't sell myself on it. And after cutting Kennedy Chandler for opening a roster spot with Kenneth Lofton, who I know he's going to be breaking the internet. I don't want to be the guy who, rains on the parade, but guy scored 42 points and was minus 14 for the game, and they lost by 15 points. So, I don't want to be that guy, but there's a reason Kenneth Lofton was not a first round pick. There's a reason Kenneth Lofton was not on my first round big board last year. Now, does he have a role in the NBA? Maybe, right? Maybe a bench scoring type, but I think Memphis, it was an interesting decision to make that move. Now, he was awesome in the G League as a rookie. Lofton was. So I hope that he finds his footing in the league. He, used to be really good in FIBA U19 play. He was the reason why USA won gold over Victor Wembanyama, if you're interested and curious about that. But Jett Howard, I think, fits in here as another ball handling archetype. Guy who can, again, I talked about Zoom earlier on. I mean, Michigan runs a ton of Zoom. And I think that's really where he finds the most benefit in his game. Now, Memphis doesn't have to run as much Zoom because they have Ja Morant, who he himself is kind of a Zoom player because he can just zoom by everybody, different kind of Zoom. But, I think that there's a pretty good situation in Memphis where, again, probably see him play some with the hustle, but there's not a pressure on Jett Howard to come in and be a day one impact guy, because he's not going to be that, but he's still going to have a nice career ahead of him as long as he takes some of the steps forward as a shooter, decision maker. He's got areas to improve. He's a very well-rounded player at this point. I think he just needs to get a little bit better in everything, which that's a tough task, but if he just puts things together slowly, year 2, year 3 of his career, we could start to see him be somewhat of an impact player at the NBA level. 26, the Pacers back on the board here. This pick comes from the Cleveland Cavaliers in the trade for Caris LeVert. And I have them looking for a bench spark plug, a guy in Terquavion Smith, who's kind of a combo guard. Now, I know he's very small, very slight, and Pacers fans might not be thrilled about this. Remember, though, we went with Cam Whitmore earlier. We got another pick coming up in just a few. The reason I went bench score, and I know people are going to say, well, you're forgetting about Nembhard. I'm not. I'm just thinking, let's get a little bit more offense here. Let's just see if we can find a guy who sticks into a role. At this spot, I didn't really love the other options. I considered Kyle Filipowski here as like a floor spacing 4. I'm just like, I don't know. I've seen Indiana do that so much. I just don't want to see another big man there. I'd rather them just play athletic and fast and quick around Halliburton and Turner. I think that's the way that I'd prefer them to play, and I think Terquavion Smith has a more clear role in the NBA. You know, I think Filipowski has a clear role in the NBA too, but I just think for Indiana, I'd prefer a specific standpoint. Now, could I see them going a variety of different ways here? Yeah, 100% I could. I landed on Terquavion Smith. I like this for them, but I understand Pacers fans if you're a little, about this pick, because I understand that too. Again, I'm not in love with this, but I think Terquavion Smith fits a pretty clear role as what he's going to be in the NBA, which is bench scoring type, which I think at 26, it's valuable. Pick 27, Charlotte on the clock now, and I have them going with Kobe Buffkin here from Michigan, another player who is somewhat similar as a bench scoring type, a guy who can step in, and I think he's a little bit smaller than Terquavion in terms of height. Now he's a little bit more filled out. You see he's got a little bit more meat on those bones in terms of muscle mass, and he had a very nice end of the year specifically for Michigan, specifically once Jett Howard was out. Kobe Buffkin really helped improve his draft stock. This is actually the first time I've included him in a first-round mock draft this year, which shows, hey, these mocks are ever-changing and always different, time in, time out. I never put together the same mock twice because I don't want to waste your guys' time. And Kobe Buffkin, I think, is a very interesting pick here for Charlotte, another team that, do they need a point guard? No, but again, you're looking for an archetype, a guy that you believe could fit in the league for a while, and I think that's where Buffkin could probably come in and give you a decent option long-term and how he's going to fit in the NBA. Pick 28, Utah back on the clock again. Remember, they had 2 picks earlier on. This is their 3rd pick in the first round. And this is where I landed with Kyle Filipowski because I just thought, well, this is something Danny Ainge would do. White big man, he's going to draft him. I'm joking a little bit here, but I do think that he's a solid player. And one thing about Utah, obviously we see after addressing guard in this draft earlier on, how good their front court was this year. Walker Kessler and obviously Lauri Markkanen were great. Kelly Olynyk also found a nice role for this team. And I think that's what the hope would be for Filipowski. Can he grow into a new Kelly Olynyk, a young Kelly Olynyk that can maybe learn from him for a year? And then you have him kind of be the bus driver for that type of a backup hybrid big who can play some small ball center, play some power forward next to Walker Kessler. And to be honest, if things got really wild, they could play Markkanen, Kessler, and Filipowski all at the same time. Now, would I advise that a lot? No, probably not. But, I mean, they're versatile enough. Filipowski did some ball handling this year for Duke. He did some shooting. He's a pretty decent passer. I think he's got to grow as a lob thrower. That was one thing. It was always an eyesore for me watching Duke because I just felt like with Lively under the rim, there were so many times that there was enough pressure on the rim for Filipowski just to float one up there for Lively to go get. We didn't see that a ton. We did see it a little bit. But I think that there's room for him to grow. But I think he has a clear role in the NBA as well. It's kind of like this bench scoring 4 who you look to an offense. I mean, we've seen this archetype thrive before and exist in the NBA, which is when you get to the back end of the first round, that's oftentimes what you're looking for, guys that you trust will be NBA players for a while. And I think Filipowski has the player DNA to do that a little bit. Pick 29, Indiana now at this spot. This pick comes from the Boston Celtics in the Malcolm Brogdon trade. I think a clear win for Boston in that trade. But Indiana, I'm sure they're happy going into this draft with 3 firsts. Gives them some flexibility if they want to move up, move around, move back down to future years. I think Indiana has their options open, which is always a good thing to have. And then this is where we go with another athlete, a guy who I think Halliburton, the one thing he's really missing there in Indiana is a vertical lob threat. I know Turner does that a little tiny bit, but I'm talking about a guy who you really just trust, like, hey, if I put this ball up on top of the backboard, he's probably still going to be the guy that comes down with it. I think Dylan Mitchell will be very fun in Indiana. I'm not going to sell my Dillon Mitchell stock. I like this kid. I think he's going to have a role in the NBA. I think he's a souped up version of Jared Vanderbilt. We saw how important he was of a get for the Los Angeles Lakers, who, you know, if Dillon Mitchell develops any type of corner three-pointer, he becomes a massive steal at 29. And even if he doesn't, I still think there's a role as a hybrid, versatile defender who can defend out on the perimeter. He's lengthy, quick, can stay in front of guys, but he also has some shot blocking capabilities as like a weak side rim protector. He's not going to be a defensive anchor. Don't get that hope up about him, but he's going to be somebody who I think can make timely plays. And, you know, so much of basketball, people like to, you know, pull the calculator out and say, well, how do we get 1.3 points per possession on this? Sometimes guys just have to make plays. And I think Dillon Mitchell is somebody who's going to go out and make plays. And if you find someone like that at 29, that's somebody who's going to stick in the NBA, and that's a win here for Indiana. Plus, I think he fits their core that they already have established. Then pick 30. This pick is the Los Angeles Clippers in a swap with the Houston Rockets on the day of the trade deadline with the Eric Gordon trade. And this pick comes from Milwaukee. So this pick's been moved around a couple of times already. But here I have them going with Amari Bailey, someone who at the beginning of the year I had as a late first-round pick. Then he fell out for quite a while, but he had a pretty strong March, and I think he's re-cemented himself as a possible or maybe even likely first-round pick because he flashed some really good defensive versatility. He sits out and gets in a stance, and he can keep guys in front of him. And the Clippers, if you had to define one question mark that this team's had over the last 5 years or so, I think the consistency at point guard has always been lacking, to say the least. Now, I think with Russ there, Russ has given them some things that they've just not had. You know, Russ has given them everything that they hoped John Wall would give them this year. It's not surprising to me. This is the second time actually in this video I talked about Russ and John Wall. Was not expecting that going into this this recording. But I think the Clippers, they tried Reggie Jackson, they've tried John Wall, they've tried, you know, Terrence Mann at point guard. They found some success with that. The Clippers are really good. They've got all the players around it to make a point guard successful. I think they're just looking for somebody who can be that. And I think Amari Bailey maybe fits into that role. Again, you're back into the first round. Some of these become hit or miss, okay? I'm going to be honest with you. I've spent so much time watching all these prospects that I feel very confident what I know about them. But sometimes things just don't plan out or play out the way you plan or play out the way you think. And sometimes we discover new flaws with the player once they get to the NBA level and we realize, oh, wow, he really struggles this way or with this skill set or with this one thing he's lacking that he really needed to provide to this one team he got drafted to. Those things happen. And, you know, is Amari Bailey a perfect prospect? No, he's going 30th overall for a reason. But I think that there's some things that he's flashed, specifically defensively, playmaking to a certain extent. Do I trust him to be a starting point guard? No. Jason Preston might be the answer to this question for them, who they already have on their roster. But again, am I sold on that either? I don't really know. I think that this is a worthwhile selection for them because it's an opportunity to get some more talent in-house and a guy that was widely perceived as a very good recruit coming in out of high school. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more. Again, thank you so much. I know, very long video here. Check out all the other content on the channel as well. Playoff predictions. I've got how the NBA draft lottery works. About to start off-season previews as well. So if you're a Rockets fan, Spurs fan, Pistons fan, and the like, you're going to want to stick around for those too. So thanks so much for watching. Again, smash that like button. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.